Welcome, everybody. Simon Rosenberg, Hopium Chronicles, back here for another interview in our Winning the House series. This one with Mondaire Jones, who's running in New York, a candidate who's gotten a lot of buzz this cycle. Welcome, Mondaire.
Great to be with you, Simon, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, listen, it's been great. I mean, you're our 11th interview now, so we're very excited to have you. And we always ask these tough questions at the beginning, which are like, how's it going? And tell us about your district and help people know more about you and the race and your district. This race has definitely gotten a lot of buzz nationally, and it's great to have you with us today.
Well, it's great to be with you and all your listeners and your viewers. Let me start by stating my gratitude for the Hopium community. I mean, I checked in with my campaign manager before this interview, and she said you guys have raised collectively through grassroots contributions nearly $100,000 campaign alone. So I can't imagine what you've done for everybody collectively. I'm so grateful to you because, this is a really expensive media market here in the New York City media market. So more directly to your question, we're north of New York City, but we're within that very expensive, in fact, that most expensive New York City media market. So people in New York City, we went up on broadcast today. We're spending $1 million this first week because thankfully, with the help of your supporters and my supporters now, I guess, I've been able to outraise my opponents. So we have the budget to be up on air this early, which is pretty extraordinary for a House race like this, even a swing district. We're north of New York City, northern Westchester, Rockland County, Putnam County, small part of Dutchess County. These are the suburbs of New York City, and we're called the Lower Hudson Valley. I was born and raised in this district, Simon. I've spent the vast majority of my life here. It is a community that elevated me back in 2020 from poverty all the way to the halls of Congress eventually later in life. And that is the American dream. And I always said growing up in Section 8 housing and on food stamps, raised by a young single mom, that if I ever got the opportunity to become successful professionally in life, that I would return to the community that raised me and do something, as Michelle Obama said a few weeks ago at that convention in Chicago. And that is precisely what I was able to do when I got elected to Congress. I was named the most legislatively active freshman member of Congress by Axios. My colleagues unanimously elected me as their freshman rep to leadership. And as you know, Simon, we were part of the most productive Congress in modern history. We got so many big things passed into law, capping the cost of insulin for people on Medicare. Next year, no one on Medicare is going to have to pay more than $2,000 annually out of pocket for their prescriptions. That is personal to me as someone who watched his grandmother struggle and work past the age of retirement just to pay for the high cost of prescriptions. I told myself I would do something about it if I ever got the opportunity to do something, and we did. We passed the American Rescue Plan Act, so I was able to bring hundreds of millions of dollars as a freshman member of Congress to schools, housing, and healthcare in my own congressional district, and so much else, of course. But in New York State in 2022, we experienced a disastrous redistricting process, something that happens, thank God, only every 10 years. But it left me out of Congress. And frankly, it left one of my other colleagues out of Congress as well, sadly, Carolyn Maloney in New York City. And so now I'm running to get this district, this seat back to make sure that we once again have the representation we deserve. And there are so few seats like this, one that Biden carried by 10 points, where we've got about 80,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans, that it's implausible that if we don't, that we would take back the House without flipping a seat like this.
Well, and talk a little bit about, what happened, even though you weren't on the ballot in 2022, in New York and California, we had turnout problems, as you know very well. Is it different now? Is it different after Kamala Harris has become the candidate? I mean, what's your sense about, we understand what happened in 2022. Have we adjusted? Are things better? I mean, how do you feel about, we're 2 months out. I mean, how's it feel now as we're closing out the election?
There's so many differences between 2022 in this district and 2024 in this district. Okay. First of all, my name's going to be on the ballot this time around, thank God, and not one of my former colleagues. But also, there is not an enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans going into November. We're able to quantify this stuff because we're constantly collecting data, shall we say, in this House race. There was an enthusiasm gap a few months ago, because of some challenges that we had at the top of the Democratic ticket. but I am here to report to you and to everyone under the sound of my voice that we are enthusiastic Democrats here in the lower Hudson Valley. We are so excited about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Um, you know, and what I need is for people to come out to vote. I need Democrats to come out to vote. We got we got the demographics to be able to accomplish what we're trying to do here. It is my opponent who's trying to peel Democratic support away from me, in fact, in order for him to get reelected in a district where he constantly votes against our values, whether it's our freedoms, like the freedom for women to make their own reproductive health care decisions, or our economic interests. I mean, this is a guy who's on the record, Mike Lawler, opposing the Inflation Reduction Act. So he would literally raise the cost of prescription drugs for people like my grandmother. He's on the record opposing the Affordable Care Act. So he would literally allow health insurance companies in New York to deny coverage to people with pre-existing conditions like cancer, diabetes, and asthma. So, we're enthusiastic. I'm on the ballot, and it's a presidential year. So we're going to have, at least 60 to 70,000 more people come out to vote in this presidential election than who came out to vote in the midterms. Disproportionately, those people can be voting for me. We just need to get our message out and explain to people that despite what my opponent, Mike Lawler, says on television, he votes just like the extreme MAGA Republicans. He throws us under the bus every chance he gets. We even got him on camera a few weeks ago when he thought the cameras were off, campaigning for Donald Trump and JD Vance and saying that Democrats hate America. There is nothing moderate about a guy who says stuff like that.
I've seen that guy on TV. I've seen Mike Lawler on TV. I mean, he's no moderate, in temperament, in his ideological approach, or anything else. I mean, he is not a moderate, and that you may catch my dog barking a little bit. I got an old 12-year-old bulldog who wanders around our house. But let me just talk a little bit about the intensity thing a little bit more, because I think this is very important, in particularly in New York and in California, is that Gallup just came out with a new poll where they track intensity over, they poll several times a year going back in history. And the only Democrats right now have a 15-point gap in intensity, an advantage over Republicans. The only time we've had a gap that big before was in the 2008 election in their polling. And certainly when you look back at 2022 and 2020 and 2018 and 2016, we didn't have large intensity gaps, so we're entering a phase now where to your point, I mean, Democrats are fired up and ready to go and excited about this election. And it's important for people to realize, who are watching, about why this matters so much, because, we are, in terms of the extra money and the volunteers that you have, all that extra intensity also then allows them to go out and reach more voters, right? And connect with more voters and connect with you. So talk a little bit about your field operation, how it feels on the ground now, for anyone who may want to volunteer remotely from around the country, if there are phone banks or texting they can do for you. Please walk us through that a little bit.
Absolutely. And let me start by just adding two additional points that I think you want to know about the differences between this and last time around in 2022. First of all, Donald Trump was not on the in 2022. He's on the ballot this time around. And my opinion would be a viable vote for a Project 2025 legislative agenda under Donald Trump. He is supporting Donald Trump for the third consecutive presidential election cycle. And for all intents and purposes, he is indistinguishable from him. The other thing is, we're not going to be outspent in this election the way the Democratic nominee was in 2022, so long as folks keep donating to the campaign. Now, in terms of the operation of the campaign, we've got 12 paid field organizers. We've got 4 field offices. We're opening up a 5th office. I'm so grateful to the New York State Democratic Coordinating Committee, and as supported by people like Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and of course, our Governor Kathy Hochul. I mean, they've just been raising so many resources to be able to help us knock tens of thousands of doors. Labor Day weekend, this past weekend, we knocked in the 17th Congressional District more doors than any other battleground district in the entire United States of America. My organizing director told me yesterday. So I'm really excited about the ground game we've got as well. We're going to change hearts and minds, and we're going to communicate the truth to people about what is at stake in this most important of elections, one door at a time. And of course, people can sign up to volunteer at mondaireforcongress.com. They can also phone bank if they don't want to come to the district or can't come to the district. If you live in New York City, for example, you can definitely hop on the Metro North and come right up to Terrytown, of Mount Kisco, anywhere up in Westchester County, or you can drive up if you're so inclined. It's a beautiful district.
It is a beautiful district. And talk a little bit about the issues that you mentioned them before, the IRA, reproductive freedom. Just walk us through when you go to the doors. What are you hearing from folks in your district?
Well, people are very concerned about the cost of living, and understandably so. This is something I know intimately well. I know what it's like to struggle in this broken economy. My mom worked multiple jobs just to provide for our family, and she got help raising me from my grandparents. My grandfather was a janitor, and my grandmother cleaned homes. And when daycare was too expensive, she took me to work with her. So when I got to Congress, I championed things like universal child care, and I passed a number of the bills, many of which I've mentioned already. But I got to tell you, we got to continue to lower the cost of healthcare. That means we got to continue to lower prescription drug prices, uh, of course, for people on Medicare, but even if you're off Medicare, you should be paying less for your prescription drugs. The federal government can do something about that. And I'm excited to get back to work and build upon the Inflation Reduction Act. Of course, we got to continue to create jobs. We got to good paying jobs. When people get paid better, they're not struggling as much in our economy, right? And so that's one way. That's one surefire way to help with the affordability crisis. And so we got to keep creating, hopefully, green union jobs, jobs of the future. And I'm so proud, frankly, of my record and this presidential administration's record, Biden Harris's record of creating many millions of good paying jobs over the next decade. We've already seen well over 10,000 jobs created under the Inflation Reduction Act in my own congressional district, according to one metric. So I'm really excited about that. We obviously have to make strides on housing and healthcare. Let me tell you how you don't address the affordability crisis. Okay, you don't do what Mike Lawler wants to do, which is throw millions of people off their health insurance plans by repealing the Affordable Care Act. You don't repeal the Inflation Reduction Act, which would raise prescription drug prices. This guy does not want to create any new housing that is affordable for people. And that is at odds with what I believe. I think we should be investing in a smart, transit-oriented way. And people here understand that. And I'm excited about getting back to work and, funding our Section 8 program. I grew up in Section 8 housing. There's a years long waiting process to get that federal subsidy to access Section 8 housing. And we, contrary to popular belief, while we are a very wealthy district overall in terms of house districts, there are a lot of people who are low income in this district, like in the community I grew up in the village of Spring Valley.
Yeah, I do think that Vice President Harris's housing proposal is one of the most powerful things she's done so far. I think it is so necessary, so needed, so important. It's ambitious, right? I mean, she's really put some, 3 million new homes built in her first 4 years. I think this is a really new, powerful weapon in our arsenal as Democrats that we didn't have before. And I really applaud the campaign for being so aggressive about this, because this was, in many ways, this was one of the things that was left on. Biden got so much done, and you working there with Joe Biden got so much done. We've recovered from COVID. The economy is strong, right? We're seeing wages rise. The deficit is down, the lowest uninsured rate in American history. I mean, so many things have gone right, but housing is still driving inflation, still making it hard for families to get that first step on the economic ladder. It's been a huge challenge for the country, and I'm really proud of the vice president for making this so central to her campaign.
It's also, by the way, on the list of things that people are talking about at the doors,
Yeah.
it's reproductive freedom. My opponent is rabidly anti-choice, cheered the overturning of Roe v. Wade. That's what Mike Lawler did. He would allow politicians in states like New York to ban abortions without exception for rape and incest. Securing our border, it may come to the surprise of several people, is something that is actually top of mind for people here in the state of New York. When the Republican governors of Florida and Texas sent migrants up here to New York State, it became top of mind for folks. And so there was a bipartisan border security bill, as you well know, Simon,
Yeah.
that Donald Trump and his Republican allies in Congress, like Mike Lawler, decided to block because they didn't want to solve the issue before the presidential election this fall. That is so cynical. And that's the kind of chaos and unseriousness that we cannot afford here in the lower Hudson Valley. And of course, we got to work on public safety. So we got to pass an assault weapons ban. We got to continue to support our law enforcement officers. And we got to make sure that we have universal background checks.
And you sound like you're doing great. I mean, it's I know we've got to close strong as a family, but I think I think that part of what people underestimate to some degree is that in New York, look, we struggled in 2022 in New York, and there's a lot of doubt that people have. But to your point, I think there's the enthusiasm at the top of the ticket. All of you were ready to run in difficult circumstances. You've built campaigns to do that. I've interviewed many of your colleagues in New York, and I'm very optimistic that if we keep providing Mondaire and his colleagues with the resources that they need, because what he got at earlier, I want to just explain, put an exclamation point on this for our viewers, is that in places like New York, what happens in house races, one of the big fears that happens in house races is that there's a drop off from the presidential down to the House. Sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's a little bit. But just name ID, just letting people know there's a Democrat named Mondaire Jones out there will mitigate some of that drop off from Kamala Harris down to that happens in every House race. One of the reasons we didn't flip the House in 2016 is we had a particularly high drop off in that presidential year down to House races. In 2018, when I was a senior strategist at the DCCC, we focused a lot on just basic name ID, right, in order to mitigate that drop off that happens right from the top of the ticket. So this money that you're helping provide to Mondaire, the work, the door knocking they're doing, where they're just communicating that he's there, that he's been a congressman, that he's a serious guy, it's hard to even describe how important that is. Sometimes people think elections are about complicated issues. Sometimes they just want to know that there's a guy there who's a Democrat that they can vote for, right? Because sometimes these ballots are confusing and people get confused. And so his ability to go up on TV right now, which our community has helped contribute to, it's a BFD, as Joe Biden would say. It's a big deal. And so everybody, thank you for helping him, for what you've done so far. We're not done. We got 2 more months. We got to keep raising. We got to keep door knocking. We got to keep making our phone calls. I know we on Thursday nights, Monday, we get together as a Hopium community and postcard and make calls into these 11 races. I don't know when I think yours is in 2 weeks. It's coming up soon, but we'll be turning the whole community into a night of phone calling and postcarding into the district to help you with turnout. We've been doing this for your colleagues. It's gone very well. We had over 500 people at our last one last Thursday night, right? So the national community of Hopium members coming together. So anyway, this went really well today. I mean, you sound like you've got a real clear shot here. Folks, let's go to work for Mondaire. Let's bring this home for him. Any final thoughts before we go? And I'm sorry about my yappy dog here today.
We call that an amen corner in the back. That the dog started barking as soon as I started saying stuff that I wanted people to agree with. Listen, I am so grateful to this Hopium community. I frankly didn't expect us to benefit so significantly, but it's great to be pleasantly surprised in our political system every now and again. And I think we've seen that with the Harris-Walz candidacy. We've obviously seen that with the support that the Hopium community has been able to drive towards my campaign. I'm looking forward to hosting one of those phone banks, and am really, really excited about taking back the House in this most important election of our lives. Thank you so much, and please do volunteer and keep giving.
Thank you. Good luck. Thank you, everybody, and let's keep working hard.
Thanks.